Recently, a study came out looking at manipulative people. It assessed participants for dark and light personality traits, asked them how often they engage in pro-social behaviors, meaning actions that are meant to help others, and how often they engage in manipulation. What they found was a little bit surprising, but not really. As it turns out, manipulative people don't just use malicious techniques like gossip and exclusion, they also use niceness as a tool to manipulate people. I'm going to break down this study, why manipulators sometimes seem like the nicest people in the world to some people, and how to apply this to real life. Let's get started. When most people think of a manipulator, they envision someone who constantly harms others, who never thinks to help because they're so focused on their own selfish interests. So they say things like, well, this person must not be so bad because they were nice to me. What most people fail to realize is that no one is 100% bad all the time. Even manipulators can behave in pro-social ways if it serves them, and in fact, many manipulators do try to charm people whenever possible, particularly because they want the social capital that they can weaponize against someone when needed. Manipulators don't target everyone, they pick and choose their scapegoats based on what's convenient to them. This study from 2025 wanted to look at the correlation between what's called relational aggression and personality traits. Specifically, how do personality traits correlate to levels of relational aggression? Relational aggression, in case you're not aware of it, is intentionally hurting someone's relationships or reputation through nothing but social tools without ever lifting a finger to cause physical harm to that person. Things like spreading rumors, silent treatment, excluding someone from a group. The personality traits that the researchers looked for were dark triad, meaning narcissism, including distinguishing based on vulnerable and grandiose subtypes, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. They also assessed for light triad traits, faith in humanity, humanism, which is valuing other people's dignity, Kantianism, which is treating other people as individuals rather than tools or objects to be used. So the question was, do light personality traits offset relational aggression and manipulation? The researchers theorized that people who have a positive view of other human beings might not as readily misinterpret ambiguous cues as threatening and then lash out through relational aggression. So if someone says, for example, oh my god, I love your outfit, I wish I were as brave as you to wear something like that. Someone who tends to assume the best of intentions might see it as a compliment, whereas someone who tends to assume the worst of intentions might think that it's a backhanded insult. The other person could genuinely mean they wish they could dress like that too, like say wearing a very old-timey dress, but they're worried about other people's judgments. But if you interpret what they said as aggressive, you might decide, oh my god, this person is rude, this person is mean to me, and start to retaliate against them. So the researchers studied over 2,000 adults aged 18 to 22 in Australia. 2/3 of them were female. They gave them surveys to measure relational aggression habits, personality, pro-social behaviors. What were the results? Personality traits explained over 1/3 of the difference in how often people use relational aggression. Dark personality traits accounted for the vast majority of this effect. All dark personality traits predicted higher amounts of relational aggression. So people who are high in narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism tend to use relational aggression much more. Duh, right? Water's wet. The strongest predictors were psychopathy and vulnerable narcissism specifically. It appears that people use gossip for social control to get what they want, and highly sensitive people like vulnerable narcissists use exclusion to defend against perceived rejection, where like they think someone doesn't like them, they think that someone's rejecting them, or maybe they don't worship them enough, so they try to get other people to turn against that person. Grandiose narcissism also predicted relational aggression, but to a much lower degree. So it seems like it's more about sensitivity or insecurity rather than like arrogance. Interestingly, faith in humanity and humanism didn't correlate with relational aggression, only Kantianism and pro-social behaviors did. What this means is that people who manipulate sometimes do have light personality traits as well. It's more about what you do rather than what you think. You could assume other people have the best of intentions and still manipulate others. If you actually want to be good, you have to do good, not just think good thoughts about people. And people with dark traits sometimes did kind acts for entirely selfish reasons. Both relational aggression and kindness are just tools to them to get what they want. Only for people low in dark triad traits did helping people actually replace relational aggression, meaning only people who did not score high in narcissism, psychopathy, or Machiavellianism did nice things without also doing manipulative things. The limitations of the study were, obviously it's correlational, you cannot assume causality, you can't assume that, for example, the dark triad traits are causing the manipulative behavior, although we can theorize. It is survey data, so, you're relying on participants being honest and being self-aware. The participants did report very low levels of relational aggression overall and high levels of light triad traits. So it's possible they may have been faking good a little bit, wanting to come off seeming positive on the survey. Either way, whether they were faking good or this was genuinely a very good sample, it does skew the data a little bit. And it was also a young Australian sample, not necessarily representative of the general population. There's so much to unpack here. I'm going to tell you exactly how to use the findings of the study to your advantage with concrete examples, but first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Quince. Quince is an online shop for high-quality clothing, home goods, accessories, and more recently, a wellness line. I use their collagen peptides in my everyday matcha latte. It's really good for long, strong hair and nails, youthful skin, strong joints. And what I especially love about this collagen powder, it has third-party heavy metal testing, which is an absolute must for me, and a lot of collagen powders do not have it. It also dissolves really easily into the drink. It's not very lumpy like a lot of collagen powders, and it contains hyaluronic acid and vitamin C as well, plus no sweeteners, no sugars. More recently, I also got their chocolate protein powder. I love that it's plant-based and also contains no added sugar with 21 grams of protein and probiotics as a bonus. I use it as a post-workout smoothie combined with soy milk, soy yogurt, banana, and a sprinkle of chocolate chips for like this almost like chocolate pudding. You just put it in the fridge, and when it comes out, it's somewhat gelatinous in its texture. After the heat wave that we're currently going through over here, I also want to make protein brownies with it. What I love about Quince is that so many of their products, whether it's their grade A Mongolian cashmere, their cotton clothes, their wellness products, are natural and health focused, but at an affordable price. They don't have a middleman, so that just automatically cuts the markup. Like, I needed a pair of everyday pants to wear, something that's like more formal than yoga pants, but more casual than my wide leg pants. So I got these black slim leg trousers, and they're perfect for running errands just casually while still looking put together. Click the link below if you want to give Quince a try, whether it's their clothing, their bedding, their decor, or certainly their wellness line. Thank you so much to Quince for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now back to the study. What were the takeaways of that study? Just because someone is nice to you does not mean that they're not horrible to someone else or that they're not trying to manipulate you. Well, they're nice to me is a really invalidating and hurtful thing to say to someone when they're confiding in you that someone mistreated them. I think we like to believe that manipulators are nice because admitting that their niceness to us is fake would mean admitting that we're nothing but a tool to that person. But we need to hear it sometimes. Manipulators will cease to care about our needs the second they want something from us that jeopardizes our needs. They're going to throw us out to dry immediately the second it benefits them. Someone can seem cooperative, friendly, warm, philanthropic, nice, kind, but also be willing to hurt others. What matters is the absence of relational aggression, not the existence of benevolence. This is why there are so many manipulative people in philanthropy. For example, people who are supposedly dedicated to helping the underserved, to improving the world, that actually hold a lot of power and weaponize that power, that are maybe only doing it for a tax write-off at the end of the day. Another takeaway is pay attention to how a person treats people who they have nothing to gain from, whether it's a waiter, an employee who's way below their rank. It's easy to be friendly with someone who has more power than you, or with someone who you may need something from further down the line. But the way a person treats those who are beneath them, those whose opinion of them doesn't really matter, that's the stuff to pay attention to. Another takeaway is that manipulative people might sometimes just come off as insecure or sensitive, but it's often way deeper than that. Sure, they start to exclude people because they perceive those people as rejecting them, but it very often stems from personality traits associated with things like vulnerable narcissism and psychopathy. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've heard an enabler say, he's just a sensitive person, or she's just insecure, as a way of justifying the most egregious behavior. Like, I'm sorry, Janet, but your boyfriend isn't just sensitive, and that's why he's constantly talking shit and tallying everything that everyone is doing to wrong him. A sensitive person maybe is a little slow to warm, maybe doesn't like to be yelled at. You're not just sensitive if you immolate every single long-term relationship you've had. That sometimes points to a deeper personality structure. At work, the implication of this study is that those in charge of hiring should pay pay attention to who they put in positions of leadership and who they hire in general. Is this person out to help the company or just themselves? So many dark triad personalities reach very high up positions because they seem charming, confident, smooth talking, and interviewers are human beings too who are also susceptible to the same kind of schmoozing as any other person. And if they're not careful, they'll end up putting someone in charge who will mistreat their staff and ultimately bring down the entire institution. I had a workplace once where my boss was a completely different person to their inferiors than they were to their superiors and their equals. And they were completely different to their inferiors behind closed doors than they were when other people were present. It was honestly kind of scary to watch. Behind closed doors, they would constantly weaponize their power against us. They would be unfair. They would do even illegal things. But when other people were watching, they would praise us. They would say how proud they are of their underlings. They would talk about values that they absolutely did not fucking embody. And some of the other staff had started to notice, but because this person had built such a strong, friendly relationship with their own bosses and with other people, the people at the bottom of the food chain didn't stand a chance. It didn't matter how much they tried to advocate for themselves. They were needing to go through the person who was mistreating them. In terms of social media and friend groups, be very careful allying yourself with people who smear, dogpile, and shame. Allying yourself against a scapegoat, against some sort of out group that the group has determined they're not like us, we don't like them. It's one of the strongest ways to glue people together, but it will inevitably backfire. Those people will turn on you the second they have something to gain from it. Don't get involved with people who are nice to you but absolutely hateful to others. I'm not talking about people who hold abusers accountable. I'm talking about people who are hateful, who tear others to shreds over tiny things. Another takeaway of this article is that if you want to actually be a good person, actually do better instead of just focusing on having good thoughts towards other people. You can spend less time trying to hold people in positive regard in your mind and more time actually volunteering, doing kind deeds, helping people out when you can, being a good member of the community. And especially do the good thing in situations where you have nothing to gain from it. Like when we first moved to this place, my husband was picking up a washer and dryer and they couldn't fit in his car. And there was this guy who had like a small truck, saw that he was having a lot of trouble getting it into the car, and he offered to drive it home in his truck. And this person had absolutely nothing to gain from this. He refused to take our money when we tried to pay him for it. He never saw us again, even though he did offer his number in case we would need something again. He lost, if anything, he lost his time, he lost energy that he spent, lugging it into our home. Absolute good Samaritan who had nothing to gain from this except the knowledge that he did a good thing. Now, manipulative people use both relational aggression and kind behavior to manipulate other people. Let me give you some very concrete examples of situations in different contexts where a person is being manipulative, but they're also using kindness to their advantage. Let's start with family. Let's say your brother wants to move into your guest room until he can find a job. You don't think it's a good idea because the two of you don't get along well. You always end up fighting when you live together. After you tell him no, he calls up everyone in your family and cries to them about how, well, now I know how little I mean to her. They all start calling you, telling you that he's really hurting, that you need to make it up to him, pressuring you to let him stay with you. On the surface, you can see the relational aggression, the triangulation, the playing the victim, emotional blackmail, coercion. But what you often don't see underneath the surface is the years of that person investing in those relationships with other family members, bailing them out when necessary because he knows one day he might need a favor in return, genuinely treating them with warmth and support when it's convenient for him. Maybe he lost his job because of a very noble reason, like calling out a genocide. Maybe he volunteers at a homeless shelter on Saturdays mainly to look like a good person, whereas you do selfish things on the weekend, like going to the club. But you, on the other hand, don't manipulate other people. So the people in your family have this context of all of the nice things that he's done for them and for others. So to them, it's hard to see this manipulation for what it is, but that doesn't mean the relational aggression he's engaging in is okay. What about in a romantic context? You're on the third date with someone, he asks you to come home with him, and you say, not tonight. After that, he starts pulling back, texting you less and less, writing shorter replies, taking longer to reply, not making plans to see you again, being less warm, dropping hints that he's dating around, like maybe he says, I might grab drinks with an old friend later tonight. So you give in, you meet up with him, you go to his place, and immediately afterwards, he's warm again. He sends you flowers, he makes you breakfast, so on and so forth. what are the manipulative techniques he's using? The silent treatment, maybe jealousy induction, but also he love bombed you up until that point with how incredibly sweet he was. He also gave you acts of kindness and gifts once he had what he wanted. It's not that he's an evil person who only does bad things, but what he does when he doesn't get his way is often manipulative. What about in a social setting? Let's say you have a group chat with your friends, but Amy keeps making plans with people directly and then inviting more people to the point where it's everyone invited there except for you. And when you are all out together, she's always taking photos on her Polaroid, but you're never in any of them. She showers all your friends with lavish gifts for their birthdays. When you tell one of your friends that you're feeling a little bit excluded by her, and word gets back to Amy, Amy tells people it's sad how insecure you are, that you're just jealous because you don't want your friends to have other friends to hang out with. What techniques is she using? Exclusion, maybe gaslighting, low-level Darvo, projection probably, playing innocent, but also instrumental kindness, acting with impeccable composure and grace to other people, being beyond reproach. She's not technically doing anything to hurt you, but she is excluding you in the process. What about at work? Let's say you're a teacher, you're paired with your coworker Jeanette to teach third graders in camp. On the first day of camp, the two of you are tasked with making a set of rules for the kids. Anytime you say something, Jeanette undermines you in front of the kids. For example, when you volunteer don't be late as one of the rules, she says in front of the whole class, I think we can frame that to be a little bit more positive. What about let's try to be on time? She monopolizes the rest of class. Then afterwards, she complains to your supervisor that you weren't involved enough in the co-teaching. Later, she texts you some encouraging words that indicate you're getting better at working together. But the next time you guys are meeting with your supervisor, she again throws you under the bus. She is publicly undermining you, being passive-aggressive, monopolizing, triangulating, but all the while she is pretending to be nice, pure-hearted, this positive person to students and supervisors. She's highly competent at her job, even while she's pushing you out of your role and deciding not to be a team with you. To an outside perspective, she seems lovely, but for some reason she's decided to make your life miserable in the process. Likely because she feels threatened by you somehow. Maybe she feels rejected by you, or she's doing impression management to your supervisor because she anticipates you might tell your supervisor she's not letting you get a word in. So if she tells your supervisor first that you're not contributing, the primacy effect means they're probably going to believe her over you. Do you see how manipulative people don't just do manipulative things? They also do kind things. They are sometimes beyond reproach in their behavior. I'm curious, have you guys ever experienced this? Like, I want to hear your stories down in the comments. But I do want to give a caveat here, which is that we all do manipulative things sometimes. We all do harmful things sometimes. We all gossip sometimes, don't really want to hang out with someone that we feel rejected by. There's a difference between sometimes engaging in manipulation as like a normal human being and being a genuinely manipulative person. And I'm not suggesting that if someone has on occasion done a couple things that were hurtful, that means that you must cut them out, that they're automatically a terrible person, and that they are basically defined by their worst moments. If we were all defined by our worst moments, I hate to tell you, but we would all be terrible people. Rather, what I am suggesting is that past a certain point, when a person is highly manipulative, when they're engaging in manipulative, relationally aggressive behaviors very chronically, very regularly, to the point where they would score high on these surveys, that is the point at which their kindness doesn't matter so much because they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it when it serves them. And those kinds of people, like I said, are dangerous to be around because they're going to throw you under the bus the first second they have a chance to. Thank you for watching. Take care.
Tell me what you